Now, there is a Brexit rally planned in Whitehall for next week, organised by UKIP. One of the speakers will be the founder of the English Defence League, Tommy Robinson. I've said today that if the party continues down this route, it effectively will become the BNP. So as the former leader of UKIP, I'm asking you, what would you do if you were me? Do you think it's time I just said, goodbye UKIP, it's not what I led, it's changed? Call me on 0345 6060 973. Maybe you think I should try and lead it again and save it, in which case text to 84850. Or maybe you think Tommy Robinson is the future of UKIP, in which case tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. And of course, you can watch us on Facebook and comment there too. There would never have been a referendum. There never would have been Brexit. There never would be the fights that are going on in Parliament at the moment had it not been for something called UKIP. And I was involved with it right from the very start, way back in 1993, when it was officially formed as a party. And I worked for it and fought for it for a quarter of a century, believing totally that it could be a force to really change British politics. Now, in many ways, I suppose you could argue it's been the most successful political party in history because it achieved its goal. It forced a referendum and it helped get the Leave vote, along too with others, of course. After that, many thought UKIP was finished. There was no need for it. But given where we are now, I mean, imagine if a second referendum was forced upon this country. There would be millions of people looking for a new political home, coming not just from the Conservative, but from the Labour parties too. In fact, in many ways, UKIP's electoral potential is far greater today than it ever was when I was the leader of it. And yet, the current leader of it, Gerard Batten, has taken it down a route that many of us find difficult. Tommy Robinson, by the way, that's not his name. His actual name is Stephen Yaxley Lennon, and he founded the English Defence League, and he is somebody that speaks out against the Islamification of Britain, sometimes in language that upsets people, but he's somebody who attracts around him, should we just say simply a group of thugs. That whenever there's a march, a rally, where Tommy's appearing, there are lots of arrests, police horses get attacked, beer bottles get chucked in the street, and I'm afraid that is what comes with him. He also himself has spent several times now, has been to prison, and you can be an online figure with that background, but I don't think it works with elected party politics in any way at all. But of course, he couldn't join UKIP or be involved in it because I'd put a rule in place banning anybody who'd been with the EDL or the BNP from even being a humble paid-up member of the party. But now he's been appointed as an advisor to the leader, and they're planning a march and a rally in Whitehall next week, a UKIP march and rally at which Robinson will be one of the speakers. And I've warned against this for month after month after month. Well, a photograph published in today's Sunday Telegraph shows the leader of UKIP sitting next to him, Tommy Robinson. And next to Tommy Robinson is a guy who 2 years ago was jailed for the attempted armed kidnapping of a man in Hampshire. In response to this, Mr. Batten said he was not aware of this man's background, and UKIP as a party said he was just there as a bodyguard. Yet this gentleman is known to organise all of Tommy Robinson's rallies. UKIP, frankly, have lied about this because they were told on Wednesday who he was. But that's what's happening. You get Tommy Robinson, you get criminals like that, and there are other people in this photograph who are former BNP and far less than savoury. I'm not being snobby about this at all. Far from it. I always wanted UKIP to embrace as many working class people as it could. I just felt you couldn't effectively argue against excess immigration, illegal immigration. You couldn't do so if you had people who were racist within the party. And I think that's what this does. And my own view from what it's worth, is if this march goes ahead with Gerard as leader of UKIP, I think UKIP becomes the BNP. It's just as simple as that. So what do? I've given the best part of my adult life to helping build this political movement. I am disgusted, but also quite depressed at seeing what is going on. What should I do, folks? Do I stick with it? Or do I walk away? Not an easy situation, not a conversation, by the way, that I ever ever wanted to have. Patrick is a new caller from Oxford. Good morning, Patrick.
Hi, Nigel.
Good morning. So, when you saw those photographs, and incidentally, Gerard Batten actually tweeted out this picture of him with this group on Friday, what sort of image does that give UKIP?
Well, I think it's more than damaging for UKIP. I think this probably is, the last nail, not the first, because they've been in decline for a while, the last nail in the coffin. And I think you have no choice but to, move. And also, I would say here that UKIP, at least for the last couple of years before the referendum, you was UKIP. So it's no loss to UKIP if you leave, because people were following you and not UKIP. I mean, obviously there was the ideal of UKIP, what that was set up.
Yeah.
But the real push, the 6 months before the referendum, I think you really come to the fore, and people listened to what you were saying, because unlike a lot of politicians, MPs, whatever, you was telling the truth. And we can go back to the thing about the European Army again.
Yeah, I got that one. Well, Patrick, I try to tell the truth as I saw it, and it's important that we emphasise that. So you think I should just walk away now, Patrick, given that it's going down this route?
I don't think you do yourself any damage at all. I mean, UKIP have damaged themselves by allowing Tommy Robinson, or whatever his name is, to become a part of the party. And I think, obviously there's lots of games going on in the background. We've seen that all these newspapers are changing their tunes and now supporting, the Brexit graft, which is bizarre. It's almost like a conspiracy in that, are people being leaned on in the background? Because I believe, as you do, and polls don't mean anything. I think most people would accept that we would just leave. And
and you know what, Patrick? If UKIP was anything like fulfilling its current potential, rather than obsessing about Tommy Robinson, and indeed appearing to be a party fighting a religious crusade against Islam, which is something, again, I never ever wanted.
It's never what it is about.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. And if it was sticking to Brexit and the betrayal of Brexit, my feeling is, in the opinion polls, it'd be a lot higher than it is. Patrick, thank you. And Patrick thinks my time is up with my party. John is a new caller from Bristol. Good morning, John.
Hello, Nigel. How are you?
I'm well. So do you agree with me that in many ways UKIP now should be riding very high in the opinion polls?
Yes, I do. I do think that. But I don't think dividing UKIP at this point is going to be beneficial to anybody. Can I just state what I think?
Please do.
I like you, Nigel, and I'm really, really proud of what you've done for UKIP, and I'm really, really proud of what you've made us aware of some of these things that have been going on. I'm so happy with that, and I'm so happy with the work you are doing in Europe. You are an absolute champion. Thank you, Nigel.
Okay.
I also don't think you should leave UKIP. I really don't. But I do think you need to give them some time to breathe at the moment around what they're doing. I don't agree with everything they're doing. I don't agree necessarily with Gerard Batten waving Tommy Robinson around the way he is. And I do believe somebody needs to come in there and curb Tommy Robinson's mouth and what he's getting up to. But there is a movement that's happening in this country. How should we call it? You've got to be so careful these days. A populist movement, a working class movement, a movement for the people. It's not perfect, but for the first time, a movement is coming forward where we can truly be heard and talk about really, really uncomfortable things that, yes, are very uncomfortable, but they need to be talked about before this country collapses.
John, let me just broaden this out a little bit. All right.
Yes, please.
This march that takes place next Sunday in Whitehall, UKIP branded march.
Yes, I'm going. Yes.
If you look at the previous events that Tommy Robinson has spoken at, every single one of them ends in violence. Every single one of them ends in bad behaviour. I say bottles being thrown, police horses being attacked. I mean, appalling scenes.
Often from both sides, though, Nigel.
Listen, John. No question. I'm sure that is true, and I'm sure there'll be antagonistic people that turn up as well. But here's my point, John. All right, it's one thing to drag the name of UKIP through the mud. All right, but it's quite another to damage the Brexit cause. And my fear is that march firstly, if you're going to have a Brexit march, it should be cross-party, not just one party, because Brexit is bigger when it finally comes to it than any one individual party. But secondly, that march takes place 48 hours before the most important vote in our lifetimes on an issue that was decided in the greatest democratic exercise in the history of this nation. And I do not want Gerard Batten and Tommy Robinson being seen to lead something that is violent, nasty, unpleasant, and will be used for the next decade to say this is what Brexit represents. And that, John, is why I have said, and it's up to them, but I've said to the UKIP NEC, who meet this evening, I think by passing a motion of no confidence in Gerard Batten today, not only do you save UKIP, but you might just save Brexit too.
Well, I thought I was about to get cut off then.
No, of course not.
I do half agree with that, but I mean there are certain problems here. For example, the campaign going on after that. So when is the next event being held by yourself?
Well, the next public event that I'm speaking at will be the 14th of December, but I'll be speaking probably in the European Parliament before that.
Oh, no, sorry, I thought there was a rally going on after the rally on the 9th in London, an official rally of some sort.
Not that I'm aware of, John, not that I'm aware of.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Not that I'm aware of. And by the way, when you talk about stuff that needs to be debated in the open, I do agree with you. I do think we need genuine free speech in this country, and I understand that. And
Thank God you do that,
and it's fine for Robinson. Let Robinson do what he wants to do. But if you put him together with a political party, it will be the death of that political party, in my opinion, John.
I just worry that at the moment there is a division in UKIP between. I mean, what really is the working class, and there is a rumbling at the moment of people in this country that are sick of being on the dole. They want to work. They want to do something about it. They want their voices heard. And at the moment, it's almost like the only option they feel they have is this populist movement. No matter who it's being led by, and that's a problem. We need to unite, Nigel, not divide. Unite. Can I just say one last thing?
Very quickly.
Everybody that's talking about this march, even the most unsavoury characters that I don't know, I just know of, are all talking about peaceful Brexit protest. That's all this is about, and about the Morocco 11 and 12. On the 10th and 11th, deal. This is what this is about, and everybody's talking about being peaceful.
If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, John. Thank you for your heartfelt call. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farrow Show here on LBC, and it's now 11:16. In some ways, I'm a victim of my own success, because the way to deal with the BNP, I found, was to go to their voters and say, if you're voting for them out of frustration, but you don't support their racist policies, come and vote for me. And they did. And electorally, we killed the BNP. But then they fell to bits in fighting, and the party disappeared, leaving a lot of people out there without a home. And those people now are trying to infiltrate and take over UKIP. And they're being encouraged in this by the current leader, Gerard Batten. So I am upset, very, very down about what is going on with this party. And I'm trying to make up my mind, unless they get rid of this leader today, do I stick with it or do I leave? I've asked for advice, and goodness me, there's no shortage of it coming through. Some of it we can even publish. Dear Nigel, you should start a new party with disgruntled Tory and Labour figures who see May throwing Brexit under the bus. It's time for a new party, modern, positive, representing the people. The People's Party. UKIP is now anti-Muslim and more than borderline racist. Crowdfund a new party and I'll chuck in 5,000 quid, says Phil in Teignmouth in Devon. UKIP has been infiltrated by the other parties purposefully to bring it into disrepute. You have to walk away, Nigel, with others and start a new party, being careful who you decide to work with. Well, I did in the past ban these people sitting around this table. They were banned from even being humble members of UKIP. And I think by doing that, we were able to talk about tough issues. It was right from every perspective. Susie is a new caller from Oxshott in Surrey. Susie, what do you think I should do?
Well, I think you should disassociate yourself from them, to be honest with you. I think you have kind of moved on in a way, and you're a very articulate, intelligent man. And what I can't understand is, why has Theresa May not, or maybe she has, had a meeting with you to discuss the ins and outs of leaving?
Susie, not only did she not want me to help at all with the Brexit process, and I think I could have done some useful work in Europe on that, she doesn't even... And did you know, Susie, I'm the only person in this country, I can say this honestly, I'm the only person alive in this country who has got good relationships with many members of the Trump administration, including the President himself. And yet, I've never been asked for a debrief, I've never been asked for a comment, either by her or the Foreign Office. And Susie, you've got to understand, the establishment Tory party hate me. Because Why? Because they never, ever wanted to have a referendum on this issue. You weren't even allowed to discuss the European Union in the early days of David Cameron's prime ministership, and they see me having brought all this down upon their heads. And you know something? They'll never forgive me.
How ridiculous.
It is completely ridiculous, but sadly true.
But you're there, you're an MEP, so you must know more about the European Union than anybody else.
Well, the one thing, Susie, I wanted to do was to use my notoriety and fame around Europe to go out round the car-making areas of Germany, and the wine-producing bits of France would have been okay, and to create huge amounts of publicity, basically saying to industry, put pressure on your own leaders in the European Commission to come to a grown-up deal with the UK. And that was the role that I felt I could have played. But sadly, Susie, I was not wanted. Thank you for your call and for your kind words. I've got a call from Tel Aviv in Israel, and you caller. Good morning, Ilan. How are you?
Good, thank God, Nigel. Lovely to speak to you.
Well, lovely to speak to you.
I watch your programme regularly.
What,
going to miss you in Lording it to Barnia and Juncker and after March.
But you listen into LBC from Tel Aviv, yeah?
Absolutely, on the internet. Moved 18 years ago because of latent anti-Semitism in the UK, which has got obviously a lot worse.
A lot worse, yeah.
I wouldn't blame it on the BNP specifically, probably more from the endemic anti-Semitism of the left, which seems to have been more accepted in circles.
Which has now been more exposed in the last couple of years than it had been before. But as somebody who moved countries because they were worried about the rise of racism, how do you see the direction that UKIP's taking, and in particular its relationship now with Tommy Robinson?
Well, I think we have to separate issues. I've been following Tommy as well, and frankly, although he may have had been a little bit misguided in the past, I think he's mostly directed by his experience, his niece or something that was one of the grooming victims. I haven't really heard a racist word come out of him in the last 4 years, and I think that obviously he may attract the wrong kind of people. But to judge a politician because of some, and in this case quite a few supporters, is the same thing that's going on in America, that people say Trump is a racist because one or two racists cling to him. So I think that you can't, if he was to cling to them, that would be different.
But the difference is, whatever they say about Trump, he doesn't appoint these people to senior positions or organisational positions within the Republican Party. And what we're talking about here is we are talking about a rally that's taking place next week, the chief organiser of which was just 2 years ago imprisoned for the attempting armed kidnapping of somebody. But isn't that pretty appalling?
So you're talking about Tommy? Because as far as I know, all he was done for was contempt of court and something they found on his mortgages.
No. I'm talking about the man sitting to the right of Tommy Robinson, all right, who was at that meeting on Friday and is the chief organiser of the rally next week, and he was in prison 2 years ago. And that's the problem, isn't it? Look, right. Robinson himself has a long criminal record. He's been to prison many, many times, all right? And he may be, for many people, a great champion because he stands up and says stuff that nobody else dares say. And he may be seen as a symbol for some of those people. But you can't have somebody that attracts the kind of entourage that he does, that has the background that he does, that can do anything in a political party, but narrow its base down so small that you destroy it effectively as a national party. And, here's the point. UKIP was a major political party. It won the European elections of 2014, something that no party had done, i.e. winning a national election, since 1906. 6 million people voted UKIP over the elections of 2014 and 15, and my argument is that Tommy will have his support group, but it'll put a glass ceiling on UKIP's national support at somewhere between 500,000 and 750,000.
So, yeah, obviously, I can see your concern, and it's gone downhill since you left. So you're obviously sorely missed in that department as well. But I think that you may need your talents may be needed somewhere else where they can actually be put to good effect.
Well, who'd have me?
Well, I don't know. Well, first of all, you need to be more assertive. I gathered that you were diddled out of the election in South Thanet because of...
well, we're waiting. We have to be very careful about that because there is an ongoing case. So we won't talk about that. But look, let's see. What I'm really worried about, just to sort of finish off on this point, what I'm really worried about isn't just UKIP. It's this march going ahead in the name of UKIP next Sunday, which, if previous form is anything to go by, is likely to turn violent, and that image being used as the face of Brexit for years to come. That worries me.
I agree with you on that.
That worries me far more than the future of me or of UKIP.
It could definitely prejudice the Brexit,
and that's my worry.
I just wanted to add that I think that the Conservative Party is suffering from a lack of leadership. That Theresa May is steering the ship of state to the rocks, and someone's going to be needed there to pick up the pieces. So I would actually like to propose a suggestion that you try to stand as a Conservative MP and be there for the country when in a place where you can actually have an impact.
I promise you they won't have me. Not under this leadership anyway. Listen, thank you very much indeed for your call from Tel Aviv. Morris says UKIP has always attracted far-right types, so why not an ex-EDL leader? Not when I was leader, Morris. They couldn't even join the party. On Twitter, you are insulting a lot of decent people. You are demonising Tommy Robinson. I think a job on The Guardian would suit you now. Look, I don't know who you are, Northern Soul, but I mean, if you really seriously think that the UKIP leader, being in a room full of convicts and thugs, including attempted kidnappers, is the way forward for a political party, or indeed for the Brexit cause, well, you and I are living on a totally different planet. OK. Peter in Lancing says, after voting UKIP for years, I will likely hold my nose and vote Conservative for the first time to keep Labour out because of the first-past-the-post system. Well, Peter in Lancing, there's a lot more people who would have voted UKIP had it not been for the first-past-the-post system, but we, I guess, have to do what we can. Kerry from Morden says, I also pledge £5,000 to a new party you set up. So, a lot of pressure on me. One or two of you think I should stick with UKIP. I have to say that my 25 years with UKIP, I haven't quite decided what to do, but I think we're pretty near the end of the road. I just can't associate with this kind of thing. I mean, I never, ever, ever, we never had violence. We never had problems with UKIP supporters, and I don't want to be part of anything like that now. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's 11:30 in time for the news with Philip Chrysikos. Well, lots of views on what I should do as far as UKIP's concerned if Gerard Batten, after this afternoon's NEC meeting, which begins at 1:30, keeps him as leader in good standing. You are seeking to destroy UKIP. You should be expelled, I get. Having second thoughts now, maybe better to start a new party, ASAP. Wherever you go, you will be supported. Miriam says, Tommy stands up for the people and gives us the truth. I'm a 58-year-old grandmother and I support him. Miriam, lots of people support him and I understand why they do. What I'm saying is it will not work with a political party. It's a very big difference. Graham is a new caller from Aberdeen. Hi, Graham.
Hi, how are you doing, Nigel? Pleasure to speak to you.
Well, I'm pretty down in my dumps, Graham, when it comes to this conversation, I have to tell you.
Yeah, you're in a pretty tricky position because Tommy's got a lot of valid points.
Uh-huh.
But he's pretty much a one-trick pony, really. Brexit's fine, and there is a problem with Islam in this country, but we can't base Brexit solely on that.
Well, Graham, Graham, just quickly, I've never heard Tommy Robinson say a word about Brexit. And yet he's being pushed to the front of a Brexit rally.
I think he's kind of jumped on the bandwagon a little bit there.
Yeah.
You know, I think he's taken his message onto Brexit and kind of put them together, which I don't think's the best thing for UKIP.
Or for the Brexit cause.
Or probably for the Brexit cause as well, even though it takes a lot of support with them because a lot of people are obviously concerned.
Yes, and Graham, a lot of people have the right to be concerned about, and there are genuine issues out there around free speech, around blind eyes that have been turned by the authorities to some terrible goings on. I completely understand all of that, and I understand why people see him as somebody, you know, who is prepared to talk about these issues. But what horrifies me, Graham, are the kind of people he seems to gather around him.
I think you're exaggerating a little bit. There is, of course, an element that are undesirable, but the majority of people that support him are pretty much normal people. It wasn't that long ago that you were being branded an Islamophobe and a racist and a bigot and a xenophobe.
Yes, but without any justification at all. And I
understand.
You know,
that.
And here's my point, Graham. Here's my point. You know, photographed next to Tommy Robinson at this meeting, and the organiser of Robinson's public events is 29-year-old Daniel Thomas, all right, who was jailed in 2016 for the attempted armed kidnapping of somebody.
Yeah, I only heard that from you today. I've never heard of that before, so
if you
I have to take your word for it. So,
if you look in today's Sunday Telegraph, you'll see it, and it is true, and we've known about it, Graham. We've known about this since Wednesday, which is why senior figures in UKIP directly warned the Central Party about this, and they chose not to act. It's very difficult for me, Graham, to stick with a party that behaves like this.
I can see you holding up the paper, yeah. I mean, fair enough. That's a good point you're making, and obviously if they knew beforehand,
quite.
You know, they should have kind of admitted it at the very least and acted on it. But, I mean, Tommy is, according to Gerard, just an advisor on grooming gangs and prison reform. If that were the case only, that's maybe okay. But leading the Brexit march on the 9th
is not okay.
And it paints UKIP into the same corner as Tommy's anti-Islam message, which is justified, but Brexit is so much more. It
damages Brexit, Graham, and it makes UKIP the BNP, in my view. Thank you. David says, you've deserted UKIP, Nigel. Gerard is the only reason UKIP has not gone bankrupt. Oh, David, I'm still paying my monthly standing order. In fact, I think of all the UKIP MEPs, I've been the biggest donor over the course of the last few years. Perhaps I'll have to cancel that. I've hardly deserted it. What I've done is to stand down as leader and let the next leader get on with it. That's what I've tried to do over the course of the last 2 years. I'm intervening now, not because I want to save just UKIP, but I think Brexit is about to be very seriously damaged. Peter says, walk away from UKIP like you did last time. I've never walked away. I've been the constant there for 25 years. I put more of my life into it, probably than the rest of the current NEC added up together. I wonder whether they're going to have the courage to act this afternoon. We'll have to see. Tim is a new caller from Falmouth in Cornwall. Good morning.
Hi, Nigel. How are you?
Well, I'm not very happy, Tim, about UKIP.
You're in a predicament, aren't you?
It's a horrible... It really... I feel huge loyalty to the party, you know, and I've seen ups and downs over that quarter of a century, and some horrible downs and some stunning ups. You always think that you stick with your group through good times and bad times, but I didn't, and I was chairman of it, I was national campaign manager, I was leader of it for over a decade. This wasn't about, launching some religious crusade against Islam, and it certainly, was very, very strict on not letting former BNP or EDL people join the party. And Tim, it's becoming something I just don't recognise.
Yeah, I understand that. However, do you not think maybe you should be willing to change your mind on who can and cannot join? The reason I say it is, I know exactly what you're saying about Tommy. He's a rough diamond, but what you've got to remember is he's lived in ground zero, so he's almost if you want to, and this isn't insulting to Tommy, he's got the post-traumatic stress disorder. He's there living with what he's fighting against. And so the people around him that you're referring to also, they've had the same problems. So when you say the guy's got he was in prison for armed robbery or armed kidnapping.
Kidnapping, yeah. Attempted armed kidnapping, yeah.
But, I mean, what about Sergeant Blackman? I mean, he shot somebody in cold blood. So you could say he's a murderer, but you could also say he's a hero because he was fighting.
Yeah, but there's a very Tim. We're talking here about a public event, a public political event that is taking place in Whitehall next Sunday that is being organised by somebody with that background. I would suggest to you that doesn't just damage UKIP. It damages the Brexit cause too, and I see that, Tim. Just finish for a sec. I see that as the baggage that Stephen Yaxley Lennon brings with him.
But if you look at his last march when they were trying to free Tommy Robinson, there was no violence, there was no aggression, there was grannies, there was youngsters, there was a complete spectrum of people supporting him, and it went without any hitches whatsoever. The press hated it.
Well, I know one or two people that have been on some of these Tommy Robinson protests who've said there's been some pretty awful behaviour too. Tim, either way, so let me ask you this. Do you think it's wise, 48 hours before the most important vote in Parliament in modern times, for Tommy Robinson and UKIP to hold a rally in Whitehall?
I don't think it'll make any difference who was there.
All right, well, if it makes no difference, I'll be thrilled. But if it does descend into yobbery and thuggery, it'll be the enduring image of Brexit that the Remainers will use for years and years to come. Tim, going to let you go. Go to Richard in Manchester. Richard, good morning.
Good morning, sir. Thank you very much indeed for taking my call.
Not a bit.
You are the greatest guy on this earth for me, and 17.4 million people are ready to pour money into some coffers to get a new party going, but with all these clowns in Labour falling out, and the same in the Conservative Party, all the lies that are being told by the whole lot of them to keep their jobs is a disgrace. You, Nigel, and I'm not patronising you, have kept us all together. When you went to Australia, I did ring you and I said, Nigel, please don't leave again, because I could feel the momentum of things going completely against Brexit, and we needed you back here. We need you to keep Brexit going through. Then put it out that 17.4 million can join your new party, whatever you want to call it. Never mind Conservatives, never mind the Labour Party, and let's get going to putting this great country in a position that it deserves, Nigel.
OK, and is UKIP the brand name that can still do that, Richard, in your opinion?
Sir, I'm not qualified to do that.
OK, but I want your view, I want your gut instinct. You know,
Nigel, you could form another party and call it whatever you want, and people would go for you.
All right, no, well, you've given me tremendous personal support there, Richard. It's very, very kind of you indeed. Well, look, it is a big dilemma for me. I just feel the party that I was part of founding, helped to build and bring to prominence, and some great success at times, I just feel it's becoming a bit unrecognisable from what it was before. A different sense of priorities, and I'm deeply saddened by it. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC, and it's 11:45. Big UKIP meeting this afternoon, and there is a motion that's been proposed by a couple of members of UKIP's NEC, a motion of no confidence in the leader, Gerard Batten. Will it pass, won't it? I don't know. I would have thought the overnight revelation that the organiser of this UKIP rally next Sunday is somebody who went to prison, was convicted 2 years ago for the armed kidnapping of somebody, wouldn't necessarily help, and that's my concern. I do feel Tommy Robinson brings some of these people with him, even though he does make some valid points, just that I don't think it works in a political party, and I begin to think I just don't recognise this as being UKIP. That's how I feel. I'm going to go to Devizes and speak to Pat Bryant. Good morning, Pat.
Good morning, Nigel. For the sake of clarity, I was until September the acting communications director for the UK Independence Party.
Yep.
And I'm still a member of the communications team now. We were actually discussing a march or a rally prior to Tommy Robinson in my opinion, hijacking this particular exercise. And I hear you saying what I have been saying for the last 2 weeks, and I am now in a situation like you are. And what I'm doing is I'm sitting on my hands and praying that the NEC do their job this afternoon, because otherwise I fear I'm out. And I suspect that's probably where you are.
Well, I suspect, given that you're on the communications team for UKIP, Pat, and you've just made this phone call, you probably will be out.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've committed political harry-carry online here on LBC, but you've done it because you care about it, and that's how I feel about it.
I care so much about this party. Elections, I've got no end of abuse. It's proven difficulty. I'm a risk analyst. I work in government areas. It's given me problems with regard to my work, and I've kept going at it for over 10 years. And
can I ask you something, Pat?
Just a tragedy.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Would it be unfair of me, or would it be correct of me to say that Gerard Batten appears to be totally obsessed with getting Tommy Robinson into UKIP?
It appears that way. It doesn't. I've not spoken with him about it, but he doesn't seem to be influenced by anything that anybody says against him, and I'm not sure how much of the communications get through because the team are very much in the same image. Leaders build parties in their own image.
Sure.
And I'm not sure how much gets through. I've got communications with the branches all the way around. And, put it this way, I think that the majority of the people have a great deal of sympathy with what Tommy Robinson is saying and what he stands for, because I don't think there's anyone amongst a whole lot of us that actually thinks that there's equality under the law anymore. Mm-hmm. But really, is this the way to do it? Mm. Why are we not actually screaming from the rooftops that, somebody can be picked up off of court steps and locked up within 12 hours, but somebody accused of fiddling their election expenses takes 3.5 years to get to court?
Well, I know. Pat, like you, I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that the NEC makes the right decision this afternoon. Thank you for being brave and calling into the show. Well, that was somebody who's still part of the current UK communications team, but probably not after 5 o'clock today if Mr. Batten wins at the NEC. But there you are. UKIP is very, very split over something that didn't need to happen. If we just kept the rule that we'd had, that former EDL people, let alone the co-founder, weren't welcome as UKIP members or as part of the party, we would not have had this problem. Julian is a new caller to this show, and he lives in Hornchurch. Good morning, Julian.
Good morning, Nigel. Let me say I'm obviously one of your number one fans. I listen to you all the time. I am a member of UKIP.
Yep.
I have met you on one occasion at an Eastbourne conference.
Okay.
And on the question of Tommy Robinson, I agree with what quite a few of the actual people have said. I mean, I'm a bit ambivalent. I don't really want him to be allowed to join the party. But I would say to your listeners that if they listen to the Oxford Union address that Tommy Robinson made, it's about an hour, just over an hour long, and he answered questions afterwards. Mm-hmm. He would give his history, and it has changed a lot of people's minds. Now, I know that Tommy Robinson attracts a lot of, let's say, yobbish side of people. And that's a great concern to me. I was on the march on the 23rd of June, and there were people with megaphones shouting, Tommy Robinson. Now, I had some sympathy with them because at the time he was incarcerated unnecessarily, in my view. It was the state acting.
Well, I'm not going to get. I can't get too involved in those specifics for legal reasons, Julian. But look, you're a UKIP member, and fine. You think that some of the things Tommy Robinson says are very important and need to be said. Fine, but is he going to be an asset to an electoral party, given A, his own record, and B, the people he attracts? Is he an asset to UKIP?
If you put it in those terms. Personally, no, I don't think he would be an asset. But I I don't mind Gerard, and Gerard's a founder member of UKIP, like yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think he's an extreme person.
Well, then maybe he just has a horrendous judgment, Julian.
Yeah, but sometimes you do need to get the advice of people who have been at the sharp end of any situation, and Tommy Robinson certainly has been at the sharp end.
Julian, I tell you what, I've been doing this for a quarter of a century. I've had some downs, but some big ups as well with UKIP. And believe me, Julian, if it carries on its current course, there is a glass ceiling on the UKIP vote. It will never be a significant force in British politics ever again, Julian.
Well, let's hope that you're wrong.
Let's hope I'm wrong. OK, we'll leave it at that. Let's hope I'm wrong. I'm not. Andrew from Leeds says, another 5k here, Nigel. Thank you very much. Nigel, I've been on Tommy's marches before. I've seen no violence. I've always taken my girlfriend too. Any violence comes from the left. The country needs someone, and Tommy is the only person putting himself forward. Paul, Tommy Robinson has talked about Islamic issues. He's talked about all sorts of issues around, lack of freedom of speech. He's never ever spoken about Brexit. What on earth is he doing at a Brexit rally, which will probably do him good in terms of social media and all the rest of it? Will it do the Brexit cause any good? No, it will not. And I really, truly believe that. Mervyn is calling from Belfast. Hi, Mervyn.
Good morning, Nigel. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm good. You know, you have a good following here in Northern Ireland. You've been here, and I don't know anybody who has made any detrimental remarks to you. Would you consider becoming a member of the Democratic Unionist Party?
Well, that's interesting. And you said, I have to tell you, Mervyn, I was in East Belfast a couple of years ago when a Range Rover at high speed came down the road, stopped next to me, the window went down, and I was told that it would be good for my health to leave the area as quickly as possible, if I can put it in those terms. And of course, we reported it to the police, and it was a stolen car and false number plates and all the rest of it. So, yes, I've had some fairly direct threats in Northern Ireland, but generally, I've always been very welcome. I haven't considered joining the DUP, Mervyn, because I'm not from Northern Ireland, and the DUP is just the Northern Irish Party, isn't it?
No, I don't agree with that, Nigel. I think the DUP, if anything, need to stretch out a little bit more. They need to be thinking about where do we go other than the 6 counties. And someone like yourself, but let me put it this way, the DUP are on very thin lines at the minute, Nigel, with RHI and a few other things, with Ian Paisley and it's allegedly it's partly a Christian party. I don't believe that for one moment.
Okay, well, Mervyn, all I can say is this about the DUP. I do know many of them, and they're doing a good job on Brexit. They really are. Mervyn, thank you all of you. Well, look, I never ever wanted to have that conversation, really, because UKIP has been a huge part of my life. I've given a heck of a lot to it. I've tried to build it up, make it respectable, make it an electoral force, keep the extremists out, but make the tough arguments. And I think this is an horrendous mistake that Gerard Batten is making. You let in Tommy Robinson. You let in some very, very bad people with him. I hope the NEC acts. If it doesn't, well, it may well be the end of the road for me after 25 years, which I feel sad about. You've been listening to The Nigel Farage Show. I'm back tomorrow at 6. At 3 o'clock this afternoon, it's Ian Payne. But up next, it's Majid Nawaz.
Thank you, Nigel. Yeah, I've been watching this with trepidation as well myself. So would you leave then after tonight?
I'm pretty damn close to it.
Right, okay. Well, coming up, Pope Francis has said that being gay is a fashion to which the clergy is susceptible, advising that gay people should not join the Catholic clergy. Is there a place for gay people in the church? Before that, thousands of new fathers are to be offered screening and treatment for mental health problems on the NHS as part of a 10-year plan for the health service to spend the 20 billion extra promised by Theresa May by 2022.